Hello, it's Joyful Hermit again, and I want to conclude comments and reflections upon um, dying to the desire for earthly human love in a companionship marriage sense. And I think I've shared mostly of probably the two, after my divorce, the two times that I felt I was in love, and of course both times they were totally wrong type of people. And the Lord has always blocked any other, and it's been good. It's been good for me to have grown through it and to have had the experiences, but also to know that the Lord desires me and I desire Him, and He gave me the strength when I realized mistake, get out of this. I want to share this. The second man was, I think I'd been Catholic about a year, but right as I was becoming Catholic, I happened to see this man from a distance, and I had a locution. A locution is when you hear a voice, and of course, maybe I'll talk about this sometime more. You have to learn to discern these things. The devil can have voices, the good angels have voices. I mean, you have to really learn. And this was a voice, probably my guardian angel, warning me, said, this man's hands have petted women. And the man wasn't with anyone that I knew of at the time, but of course I found out later, yes, he was a womanizer. And wasn't about to stop that pattern either. So anyway, as I said, even I had talked about it with my godmother, who in the first couple of years we were very close, and she was a religious sister, and that too, um, my heart, my emotions were going one way, and my mind was cluttered and not thinking clearly, and I was grasping for any kinds of excuses to continue thinking maybe I should think of marriage or being in love or relationship and not hermit, and ignore all these other things that had occurred to me in my spiritual life, that God reached in very strongly, saying He wanted to be espoused to me. So I was telling my godmother, a religious sister, about it, and she let loose her feelings, which revealed an anger and an animosity toward men. So, of course, I didn't listen a twit to her, and it also helped me understand that had an unhealthy attitude. As I found out later, many in her religious order were very anti-men, anti-priests even. So, of course, that also helped me, though, to continue on my little folly path. And, but eventually, as I had said, I was given the strength by God to get out of the situation and tell this man, don't visit, don't call, nothing. And in the meantime, I had learned from him. Yes, he was involved with other women, and um, and I don't know to what deep extent, but enough, and sexually involved. So um, when I finally just totally cut it, and knew I was very strong with it, the Lord had given me the strength necessary, and I was very humbled and very sorrowful and repentant for even having uh, sort of been, I guess, unfaithful in a way to my spouse, to Christ, my spouse, just in the flirtation of the whole idea, and the time spent talking with this man, or light affection, very light affection. But anyway, about a week later, after I had totally cut it off, or maybe it was even within a couple of days, I woke up in the middle of the night and a man was sitting on the side of my bed. And at that time, I wasn't clear on the difference between corporeal visions or dreams or anything like that. And at first, I thought it was a man had somehow gotten into my house. All I could see was from his knees up to about here. But he had like a white linen wrap around his waist, not a towel, but a light, very lightweight kind of wrap. And his chest was bare. And I was thought, is this person really here, or is this some kind of a dream? I reached out and I touched his chest, and I could feel the skin. And I immediately, just in fright, and the first words out of my mouth were, "Oh Lord, no more men troubles. Please, no more men troubles." And immediately I was shown the face of this man, and it was Christ. And in that instantaneous seeing his face, he like catapulted down mystically, somersaulting into a little boy of 4 or 5 and just laughing cheerfully, joyfully laughing, and disappeared, just dissipated into thin air. And later, the next day, I, of course, immediately contacted this old Irish priest who I was very close with for years. And he told me, and he had also heard my confession and knew the struggle I was having with this man. And he told me that it was an affirmation from Jesus, that he had tested me to see my reaction. And he was very, very pleased that my immediate gut instinct in the middle of the night, no warning ahead of time, was no, Lord, no more men troubles. So that was that. And in fact, though this man did continue to try to infiltrate my wall, my chastity belt kind of symbolic wall, that no. And several months later, I had I saw somebody. I was in the church praying, and somebody happened to come in who worked for this man. And she came over to me and said, "Oh, have you heard? So and so is going to be leaving and is being transferred in his job the first part of the year." And right before this woman had entered, I had a locution that had told me he will be gone by the end of the year. And I was so thankful. And then it was immediately validated, I suppose, within 10 minutes. And what are the odds of this person who worked for this man just happened to come into the church? So the Lord is with us. He helps us. He helps us get through. Once we have said we love him and we want to do his will, he will keep with us and help us, but also test us and put us through the trials. The first time I ever saw this man, in fact, about a year prior to the friendship developing, I saw him from a distance, and a locution then said, "This man has petted women." And again, that's what I was saying. He was a womanizer. And yet I didn't want to believe that locution. So part of the spiritual life is to learn how to discern messages. I didn't even know what these voices were that I'd had for years of my life before I was Catholic, and I have read up on these things. It's called a locution, and you have to discern if it's coming from God or from your guardian angel or good angels, good spirits, or from the devil and bad spirits, or in some cases these things can be from the mind if the mind is unstable. And that's why it's also good to be thoroughly checked out if you start getting voices. Make sure you don't have some kind of a concussion, and get yourself to a very, very good clinical psychologist who hopefully understands these things or can ascertain if you have some kind of mental or emotional disorder. So, which of course I did immediately, way back in 1986 it was, when the friend that I had been talking with said, "Oh, you're on a different wavelength, and you don't have things or experience things like other people." So I immediately went into Dr. H, and he immediately, you know, examined and talked and asked many, many questions. So this is part of it. And the vision I had with being able to touch the actual chest of this man who was Christ, that's called a corporeal vision. And I had had them before, even way before I was Catholic. And I'll maybe share some of those sometime. But I didn't know what they were called. And I suppose you don't have to know, but it seems to help to educate yourself so that you know what you're dealing with. And for me, it just helps me stay very grounded and assured. And even like I said, after I had that vision, I went over it with my spiritual director and confessor, who was this elderly priest at the time. I went past everything by him for added validation. So anyway, that was the end of all of that. I did have one situation, maybe 5 years ago, where a man after Mass, it was prior to my having these ecstasies at Mass or these states, had seen me sitting alone in the pew, and after Mass said, "Oh, I was just about ready to come up and sit beside you." Then he asked me out to dinner. Well, fortunately, I was moving the next day, and I was totally exhausted. Plus, it's very hard for me to sit and eating out or anything. It just kills my back. So I had that as immediate excuse, but I talked to my then confessor about it and went into confession and said, "Oh, men troubles, men troubles." And my confessor at the time, of course, he knew me. He knew my heart had totally been devoted to Christ. No involvements with men, no dating, nothing like that. And he was stunned, and his mouth opened and dropped, and his eyes got big, and and I said, "Yes, a man wanted to sit by me at Mass, and he asked me out to eat." And this confessor, he just was like, "Oh," I guess he was worried I was going to say that, I'd done something horrible, or I don't know. Anyway, um, but he said, now, he says, "You can just be firm, but just say, 'No, I'm not at all interested.'" And that reassured me. And of course, I prayed and prayed that this man would never approach me again, and he didn't. He's a very nice man. I even told my adult children, where was he, 20 years ago? Before I was Catholic, before I even had the espousal of my soul. And, oh, maybe it's been a few years ago, too. I had a downtime, a lonely time, and financial stresses, and not feeling well, and how was I going to handle everything? Just tired of doing everything. My taxes, my this, my that, anything that needs to be done. A hermit does it. And you're supposed to be financially autonomous and not reliant. Handle everything on your own. And I told one of my adult daughters, "Oh, been thinking it would just sort of be nice to be married." And she said, "Well, Mom, you'd have to have TV. Men like to watch TV. You'd have to clear out all your religious art and want to do things other than just go to Mass." And my son then said, "Well, you'd have to stop all this Jesus stuff, Mom." I said, "Oh, no, I couldn't," and laughed and said, "Well, it was just a frivolous thought anyway. I just for a day wanted the easy way out, what I thought was the easy way out on this earth. And of course it isn't. I can't tell you enough how the life being celibate and chaste and single, when you are called to give yourself totally to the Lord, He does everything for you. He helps you so much. And your guardian angel does things. In fact, I think the next post I'm going to tell you how I found out about my guardian angel. God bless His real presence in you. And I think I'm finished talking about the single life of hermithood.